I never imagined my marriage would collapse on a beach in Bali, under perfect sunlight, white sand, and a sky so blue it looked fake. But that's exactly where everything finally broke. People think betrayal sounds loud, explosive, dramatic. In reality, it can look like laughter, like sunscreen, like your husband smiling at another woman while you sit 2 feet away, invisible. If I'm honest, the warning signs had been screaming at me for years. Not whispering, screaming. Red flags so obvious they could have been used as festival banners. But denial is a comfortable drug. It lets you keep your life intact a little longer, at the cost of your dignity. I told myself I was being supportive, flexible, mature, that marriage meant compromise, that love meant patience. What it actually meant was that I slowly turned into unpaid staff in my own relationship. Let me show you the exact moment it ended. We were in Bali for our anniversary, a trip my husband Ethan had obsessed over for months. Not for us, for the photos, the angles, the lighting, the effortless couple goals aesthetic. Every beach, every breakfast, every sunset was content. I had become the photographer, the bag holder, the retake assistant. That Tuesday afternoon, for the first time on the trip, I was actually relaxed. Cold drink in my hand, book open on my lap, ocean wind on my skin. My shoulders finally unclenched. Then Ethan sat up beside me and did that little posture shift he always makes right before doing something that will cost me emotionally. "Hey," he said casually, "I need someone to put sunscreen on my back." I was right there, close enough to touch him without leaning forward, but he wasn't looking at me. He was looking past me, directly at our tour guide. Her name was Lila. Tall, fit, sun-bronzed, the kind of effortless beauty that makes cameras feel unnecessary. She jogged over when he called, smiling, bright, unaware she was stepping into the center of my marriage's collapse. And then he untied the back of his swim shirt strap and handed her the bottle. Not me, her. And when I raised one eyebrow, just one, he laughed and said loudly, "Relax, if you're jealous, you can go home." So I did. He just didn't know it yet. At the time, I was 32. I'm the kind of woman people describe as steady. Not because I never feel chaos, because I know how to keep my face calm while my insides are on fire. I work in operations management for a mid-sized logistics company back home. It's not glamorous. No champagne lunches, no dramatic office romances, no work-wife jokes people pretend are harmless. It's schedules, contracts, delays, and solving problems before they become disasters. I'm good at it because I notice patterns. I notice tiny shifts. I notice what people don't say, which is why it's almost embarrassing that I spent 3 years pretending not to notice my own marriage was rotting from the inside. Ethan and I met at a wedding, not a movie wedding, not a soft string lights, slow dance under the stars wedding. It was chaotic, loud, hot, the kind of wedding where people sweat through their dress shirts and still drink like they're trying to forget their own lives. I was a friend of the bride. Ethan was a friend of the groom. I remember standing near the bar because I needed water more than alcohol, and I remember him appearing beside me like he belonged there, confident, effortless, already smiling like he knew the entire room was watching him. He didn't say hello. He said, "They don't know how to make a decent drink here." He nodded at the bartender like he was disappointed in him on a personal level. Then he turned to me, eyes bright, and asked, "What are you drinking?" "Water," I said. He blinked, as if I'd admitted I ate paper for fun. Then he laughed, this warm, full laugh that made people look over, the kind of laugh that feels like a spotlight. "Okay," he said, leaning in just slightly. "You're either the smartest person at this wedding or the most dangerous." That line should have made me roll my eyes. It was smooth in a way that was almost annoying. But the thing about Ethan was that he didn't deliver lines like he was acting. He delivered them like he meant them, like he was genuinely curious. We talked for hours. Well, he talked, and I listened, and I answered, and I laughed more than I expected to. He told me about his job in marketing, how he wanted to build his own consulting brand, how he hated mediocrity, how he believed most people lived like background characters because they were too afraid to take up space. He made space for himself like breathing. And at the beginning, I admired it. He walked into rooms and people turned toward him without even realizing they were doing it. He didn't beg for attention. He collected it. When he introduced me to someone, he'd put his hand lightly on the small of my back, like a claim, like a comfort, like I was someone worth presenting. When he looked at me, it felt like he really saw me. After years of being the responsible one in my friend group, the stable one, the woman people leaned on, being chosen like that felt intoxicating. The first year was genuinely good. He was fun, spontaneous. He made normal errands feel like adventures. Grocery shopping became a mission. A Sunday brunch became a ritual. He'd take photos of me when I wasn't looking and say I was beautiful, like it was an obvious fact. I thought I was lucky. I thought I'd found someone who brought color into my life. But somewhere between year 1 and year 3, Ethan's confidence mutated into something else. It started small. He began checking his reflection everywhere. Store windows, mirrors, phone screens, any surface that could bounce his image back at him. Then came the posting. At first it was occasional, a cute photo, a date night story. Then it became a need, an itch he couldn't stop scratching. Every restaurant. What's the Wi-Fi password? Every coffee shop. Wait, don't eat yet. Let me get a shot. Every sunset. Stand there. No, 2 steps left. Tilt your head. Smile like it's candid. I became his photographer, his lighting assistant, his editor. And if I didn't do it right, he didn't say please and thank you. He sighed. He rolled his eyes. He'd take the phone back and redo it himself, like I was incompetent staff. Babe, he'd say, laughing like it was cute. You don't have an influencer brain. It's okay. It wasn't okay. But I told myself it was harmless. Then the flirting started. Not the kind people deny. Not the accidental charm. It was deliberate. If a woman looked his way, he leaned into it like a stage light. He'd laugh too loud at nothing. He'd touch arms. He'd hold eye contact a little too long. He'd turn simple conversations into performances. And every time I brought it up, carefully, calmly, because I didn't want to be that woman, he'd say the same thing. You're being jealous. Then he'd say it with a smile, like he was teasing. And if I didn't laugh, he'd say it sharper. Insecure doesn't look good on you. So I learned to swallow it. I learned to become smaller so he could stay the center. I didn't realize how far that had gone until I met his friends. Because Ethan didn't keep grounded people around him. He kept mirrors. Madison, loud, theatrical, addicted to attention like oxygen. Tyler, a wannabe DJ who introduced himself like a celebrity and never noticed when people wanted him to stop talking. Jessica, the gossip engine, always whispering news with the intensity of a scandal reporter. They weren't evil. They were just like him. People who believed life was a stage and boundaries were optional. When Ethan announced they were coming with us to Bali, he said it like it was a gift. Anniversary trip with the crew, he said. It'll be legendary. I remember forcing a smile and saying, sure, because that's what I'd been doing for years. Smiling through things that didn't feel right. And Bali was supposed to be a reset, a celebration, a reminder of why we chose each other. Instead, it became the place where I finally saw my marriage clearly. Under sunlight so bright, I couldn't hide from it anymore. By the time we landed in Bali, I was already tired. Not physically, emotionally. Tired of adjusting. Tired of laughing on cue. Tired of pretending I didn't notice when my husband turned every interaction into a performance. The first 2 days weren't disastrous, just loud. Madison shrieked at every sunset like it had personally performed for her. Tyler kept trying to network with the hotel DJ. Jessica somehow found drama in breakfast buffet arrangements. And Ethan? He thrived. He moved through the resort like he owned it. Shirt unbuttoned, 1 button too low, sunglasses always perched just right. smiling at staff like they were extras in a movie he was starring in. I watched him become a bigger version of himself here. Louder, flashier, more theatrical. And then Lila entered the picture. She was our assigned tour guide. Early 30s, confident without being loud, athletic, calm. She didn't try to dominate space, she just occupied it naturally. The first morning we met her, she was leading sunrise yoga on the beach. Ethan stopped mid-sentence when he saw her. It was subtle, but I saw it. That slight pause in his breath, the way his shoulders squared, the way he ran a hand through his hair before walking closer. "Good morning," she said warmly to the group. Ethan stepped forward immediately. "So, you're our guide?" She smiled. "That's the plan." He laughed like she'd said something clever. I stood half a step behind him, invisible. At first, I told myself I was imagining things, but over the next few days, patterns formed. At the temple tour, he stood next to her instead of me, nodding intently while she explained architecture, asking follow-up questions that sounded more like admiration than curiosity. "That's fascinating," he'd say, leaning slightly closer. "You really know your stuff." During snorkeling, he suddenly needed help adjusting his fins, even though he'd been snorkeling since college. Lila knelt in the sand to assist him. He laughed. "Guess I'm hopeless without expert guidance." I watched his hand brush her shoulder when he stood up. Maybe accidental, maybe not. At dinners, he somehow always ended up seated next to her, asking about her life, her travels, her philosophy on presence. He never asked me about my day. Madison would glance at me sometimes, just for a second, like she was observing a social experiment. Jessica whispered once, loud enough for me to hear, "Lila is exactly Ethan's type." I felt the heat climb up my neck. "What's his type?" I asked, forcing lightness into my voice. Jessica smiled like she was sharing harmless gossip. "Confident, outdoorsy, not clingy." Not clingy, I swallowed. Because somewhere along the way, expressing discomfort had become clingy. Every time I tried to bring it up gently, Ethan dismissed it. "Babe," he said one night on the balcony, phone glowing in his hand, "you're reading too much into it." "I'm not reading," I said quietly. "I'm observing." He exhaled sharply. "She's our tour guide. I'm being friendly. You're making this weird." There it was again. I was the problem. My tone, my perception, my sensitivity. He kissed my forehead like I was a child and went back to scrolling. That kiss felt like erasure. The more he leaned into Lila's orbit, the more I felt myself shrinking. And here's the part that hurt the most. He wasn't hiding it. He was comfortable. Like he genuinely believed he could flirt, charm, glow under someone else's attention. And I would stay exactly where I'd always been. Steady, patient, supportive. The final straw wasn't the sunscreen. It was the giggle he used around her, the one I hadn't heard in months. It was realizing that I had become background noise in my own marriage. By Tuesday afternoon, something inside me had already cracked. And when he said, "If you're jealous, go home," I realized something terrifying. He genuinely believed I wouldn't. Tuesday afternoon. The sun was brutal, but beautiful. The kind of tropical heat that makes everything glow. Skin, sand, illusions. We were stretched out on those overpriced beach loungers Ethan insisted on renting because the regular ones looked cheap in photos. Madison and Tyler were already halfway through their second round of cocktails. Jessica was filming a slow-motion beach walk for a story she'd probably caption, "Healing Era." For the first time that entire trip, I wasn't performing. I had my sunglasses on, a book open, a drink sweating in my hand. The ocean sounded steady, rhythmic, calming. I remember thinking, maybe I can just exist for 10 minutes. Then Ethan sat up beside me. I felt it before I saw it. That shift in his posture, the slight tightening in his jaw, the energy change. "Hey," he said casually, "I need someone to put sunscreen on my back." I lowered my book. "I'm right here," I said softly. He didn't respond to that. Instead, he lifted his hand and waved. "Lila," he called out. She turned from where she was helping another group, jogged over, smiling. "Yeah? Can you help me out? I missed a spot earlier." I froze. The sunscreen bottle was in his hand. I was sitting 2 feet away. 2 feet. Close enough that I could have leaned forward and done it without even standing. But he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at her. And then he did it. He untied the back of his swim shirt strap and shrugged it down, exposing his back. Casual. Like it was nothing. Like I wasn't there. Like I didn't exist. Lila hesitated for a second. Just a flicker. Then took the bottle. "Sure," she said politely. She squirted the lotion into her hands and began rubbing it onto his back. Slow, careful, professional. Ethan exhaled like he was receiving a spa treatment. Madison giggled. Tyler muttered, "Living the life, man." I felt my throat tighten. I raised one eyebrow. Just one. Not dramatic, not loud, just disbelief. Ethan turned his head toward me and smiled. Not apologetic. Not sheepish, amused. "Relax," he said loudly enough for the group around us to hear. "It's sunscreen." The air felt heavier. I could feel other beachgoers pretending not to look. Then he added the line that detonated everything. "If you're jealous, go home." Madison snorted. Jessica whispered, "Oof." Someone behind us murmured something I couldn't catch. My heart wasn't racing. It wasn't even pounding. It was quiet. Too quiet. I felt something inside me go still. Not rage, not tears, clarity. He wasn't embarrassed. He wasn't concerned. He was entertained. He wanted a reaction, a scene, a dramatic wife moment he could later spin into a joke. I didn't give it to him. I picked up my drink, took one slow sip, looked at him through my sunglasses and said evenly, "Okay." He blinked. "Okay?" he repeated, half laughing. I nodded once. Then I went back to my book. The conversation around us resumed awkwardly. Lila finished and stepped back. Ethan stood, shook his shoulders like he'd just completed something triumphant. Madison pulled him toward the volleyball group. Within minutes, they were laughing again, running, playing, like nothing had happened. Like my humiliation was just part of the vacation entertainment. I stayed there another hour, watched the waves, listened to the ocean, and felt the noise in my head fade into something frighteningly calm. When I finally stood up, no one noticed. I walked back to the hotel alone. The hallway was cool and quiet compared to the beach chaos. Our room door clicked open. Inside, everything was a mess. Ethan's clothes scattered, shoes kicked off wherever he'd last stood, charging cables tangled across the desk, his cologne bottle open, sunglasses tossed on the bed. My belongings were neatly folded in one corner, because even in chaos, I had kept my order. I stood in the middle of that room for a full minute. Then I pulled my suitcase out from under the bed, and I started packing. Not angrily, not dramatically. Methodically, each shirt folded smooth, each crease aligned. Toiletries placed back into their designated pouch. Packing quietly is powerful. Yelling is emotional. Packing is final. By the time I zipped the suitcase closed, my hands were steady. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my phone. There was a flight leaving Bali the next morning at 11 a.m. 2 layovers, 20 hours of travel. I booked it. Business class. If I was going to leave my marriage, I was going to do it with legroom. Confirmation email. Boarding pass downloaded. Airport pickup scheduled for 9 a.m. Then my phone buzzed. "Ethan, where'd you go? We're getting drinks." No apology. No acknowledgement. Just logistics. I stared at the message, then typed back, "Heading to bed early. Have fun." He responded instantly. "Don't be boring," I smiled. Not because it was funny. Because it was over. I went downstairs to the front desk. "Hi," I said calmly. "I need to check out tomorrow morning. Just me." The receptionist looked at my suitcase, then at me. "Of course, ma'am. Will you need transportation?" "Yes. Also, please remove my credit card from the room account. Leave my husband's card on file." A flicker of understanding passed through his eyes. "Right away." Back upstairs, I sat on the balcony with a minibar beer that cost too much and tasted like closure. The ocean didn't care about human drama. It just moved. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could move too. That night, Ethan came back loud and tipsy with his friends. He saw my packed suitcase by the door. "Why is your stuff packed?" he asked. I was already in bed. Eyes closed, breathing even. I didn't answer. He huffed. "Are you seriously asleep?" I stayed still. He muttered something about me being dramatic. Within 5 minutes, he was snoring beside me. I stared at the ceiling fan spinning slowly. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., I would leave, and he had absolutely no idea. My alarm went off at 7:30 a.m. Bali time, vacation time. The middle of the night for people who had stayed out drinking and flirting until midnight. Ethan didn't move. One arm flung over his face, mouth slightly open, completely at peace. I sat up slowly and looked at him. This was the man I had married, the man I had defended, the man I had adjusted myself around like furniture in a room that never quite fit. And I didn't feel hatred. I felt finished. I showered quietly. The water hit my shoulders, and for a second my chest tightened, not from sadness, but from the weight of realization. How many times had I swallowed discomfort to avoid conflict? How many times had I convinced myself I was too sensitive? How many times had I laughed when I wanted to say, "That hurt"? When I stepped out of the bathroom, he was still asleep. I did one final sweep of the room. Passport, wallet, charger. Dignity? Mostly intact. I rolled my suitcase toward the door and paused. For a second, just one, I considered waking him up, telling him, giving him the chance to apologize properly. But then I remembered his voice on the beach. "If you're jealous, go home." So I did what he told me to do. I left. The door closed softly behind me. No slam, no drama, just a quiet click. The ride to the airport was silent. The driver didn't try to make conversation. I appreciated that. The sky was bright. The ocean flashed between palm trees like nothing in the world was broken. Security was smooth. Boarding was smooth. I accepted the pre-flight champagne like someone celebrating a milestone, because I was. When the plane doors closed and my phone finally connected to airport Wi-Fi, it exploded. Missed calls. Texts. Voicemails. All from Ethan. The first text. "Where are you?" Then, "Why is your suitcase gone? Are you joking right now?" 7 missed calls in 15 minutes. I watched them appear without answering. Then the voicemails began. The first one was confused. "Okay, what's going on? Your stuff is gone. Did you move rooms? Call me." The second was irritated. "This isn't funny. You can't just disappear like this." The third had that familiar edge. The one that turned everything into my fault. "You're seriously overreacting about sunscreen. It was a joke. You embarrassed me." Embarrassed him. I leaned back into the leather seat and let out a slow breath. He said that without irony, without pause. Around 11 a.m. Bali time, the messages changed tone. "The hotel says your card isn't on file anymore." My card declined. "Can you call the front desk and fix this?" I almost laughed out loud. My card hadn't declined. I had removed it. And Ethan, my charismatic, attention-commanding husband, had a habit of maxing out his credit card every few months. I usually handled it quietly, paid it off, smoothed it over. Apparently, he had forgotten that detail. Another voicemail. His voice wasn't irritated anymore. It was strained. "I'm at the front desk. They're saying I need to pay up front for the rest of the week. My card isn't going through. Can you please just call me?" I imagined him standing there, Madison and Tyler watching, Jessica whispering, Lila probably somewhere nearby. Public. Uncomfortable. Humiliating. Just like yesterday. Another text. I had to call my mom for money. I closed my eyes. He had called his mother, the same woman who once told me I needed to loosen up if I wanted to keep a man like her son. My phone kept buzzing. Madison texted me, "Is everything okay? He's freaking out." Tyler, "Come on, this is harsh." Jessica, "OMG, what happened?" I didn't respond. Somewhere between Bali and Tokyo, the shock wore off. Not anger. Not revenge. Accountability. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't scrambling to fix the emotional mess he created. I wasn't smoothing over awkwardness. I wasn't laughing off disrespect. I was letting consequences exist. When we landed from my layover, I turned my phone back on. More messages. One from Ethan. Please just talk to me. Then another. You didn't really leave, right? I stared at that one for a long time. You didn't really leave. He genuinely believed I wouldn't, that I couldn't, that I'd never choose myself over the relationship, that I would always come back. I typed 3 words. I'm on my way home. The typing bubble appeared instantly. What do you mean? But I had already put my phone on airplane mode. For the first time in our marriage, I wasn't available on demand. And somewhere above the Pacific Ocean, wrapped in quiet and engine noise, I realized something that made my throat tighten. I wasn't jealous on that beach. I was disrespected. And the difference matters. By the time I landed in Los Angeles, my phone felt like it weighed 5 pounds. Notifications stacked on top of each other. Missed calls, text chains, voice notes. Ethan wasn't just calling anymore. He was spiraling. I didn't respond immediately. I waited until I was in the Uber, suitcase beside me, city lights sliding past the window. Then I turned my phone back on. 32 new messages. The first few were still defensive. It was sunscreen. Everyone thinks you overreacted. But then, somewhere in the timeline, the tone shifted. She's asking questions. Madison says you're not answering her. Why did you remove your card? The financial part hit him harder than the emotional part. That told me everything. Then came the messages from his friends. Madison, girl, he's freaking out. Tyler, this is messy. Jessica, okay, but he did kind of push it yesterday. And then the one that made me sit up straighter. Jessica again. Did he really tell you to go home in front of everyone? So someone had started telling the truth. I didn't answer them. But about an hour later, my phone buzzed with screenshots. I don't know who sent them. Anonymous number, no name attached. It was their group chat. And they were arguing. Madison, guys, maybe he took it too far. Tyler, it was just sunscreen. Jessica, it wasn't just sunscreen. He humiliated her. Madison, he literally told her to go home if she was jealous. Tyler, and she did. There was a pause in the chat. Then Ethan entered. I can't believe she actually left. Madison, why did you say that though? Ethan, I was joking. Jessica, it didn't look like a joke. Madison, she looked really calm. Ethan, exactly. She didn't even react. She just said, okay. Jessica, that's worse. I stared at that last message. That's worse. He had expected tears, anger, drama. He hadn't expected silence. Then came the part that made my chest tighten, not with pain, but with clarity. Ethan, she embarrassed me. Madison, how? Ethan, by leaving. Jessica, you told her to. Ethan, that's not the point. There it was. It had never been about sunscreen. It was about control, about performance, about expecting me to stay in my assigned role. The supporting character, the understanding wife, the woman who tolerates flirtation because she's secure. Meanwhile, on Instagram, Ethan had made a mistake. He posted a beach photo from the day before. Caption, some people can't handle strong personalities. Living my truth. No regrets. The comments were ruthless. Didn't your wife fly home? Strong personality isn't the same as disrespect. POV. You told her to leave, and she left. People knew. Someone had talked. Within 20 minutes, he deleted the post. By the time I reached our apartment, I felt detached, not triumphant, not shattered, just done. The apartment was quiet, clean, ordered. I dropped my suitcase in the hallway and stood still for a second. The silence didn't feel empty. It felt safe. That evening, Ethan called again. This time, I answered. His voice sounded different. Not charming. Not amused. Smaller. You really left? Yes. You didn't even talk to me. You told me to go home. It was a joke. Explain the joke. Silence. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? He exhaled sharply. You're twisting it. I'm repeating it. Another pause. I didn't think you'd actually leave. There it was. The assumption. The certainty that I would stay. That's the problem, I said quietly. You didn't think I would. You embarrassed me. The audacity almost made me laugh. You asked another woman to touch you in front of me. You told me to leave, and you're embarrassed? You're making it sound worse than it was. I'm describing it exactly as it happened. He shifted tactics. Okay, fine. I crossed a line. I'm sorry. The apology felt rehearsed. You've said that before, I replied. About what? Christmas party. Your boss. Silence. Your friend's wedding. Silence again. Each time he flirted, crossed boundaries, laughed it off, and I absorbed it. This time is different, he said quickly. I'll change. I closed my eyes. 3 years of, I'll change. I already changed, I said. What does that mean? It means I left. He didn't respond immediately. Then his voice cracked, just slightly. So that's it? You're throwing away 3 years? I'm not throwing anything away, I said calmly. I'm choosing not to keep shrinking. He started to cry. And for the first time in our relationship, I didn't rush to comfort him. I let him feel it. You can't just end a marriage like this. You ended it on the beach. Click. I hung up. Not angrily, not dramatically, just decisively. That night, I slept through the entire night without waking up once. And that scared me because I hadn't realized how tense I'd been until the tension disappeared. The first 3 days after I got home felt powerful. Clean apartment, quiet mornings, no performing, no walking on eggshells. But on the 4th night, the silence shifted. It wasn't comforting anymore. It was heavy. I was sitting on the couch with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, half watching something on TV I couldn't focus on. The apartment felt larger than usual, echoing. That's the part no one talks about. Leaving feels strong at first. Then it feels lonely. I walked into the bedroom and saw the half-empty closet, his side still full, mine partially cleared because I had packed light for Bali. The indents on his pillow, the faint scent of his cologne still clinging to the sheets. 3 years doesn't evaporate just because you buy a plane ticket. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally let myself feel it. Grief. Grief for what I thought we had. Grief for the version of him I fell in love with at that wedding. Grief for the woman I used to be. Confident, calm, self-assured. Before I started second-guessing my instincts, I replayed the beach moment in my mind. His voice. If you're jealous, go home. The way Madison laughed. The way strangers looked away politely. The way my body went cold. Was I too sensitive? Was I dramatic? Should I have handled it privately? The doubts crept in like fog. Maybe I should have talked to him first. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe I should have stayed and fought harder. That's the dangerous part of being the reasonable one. You question yourself first. I picked up my phone, scrolled through old photos. Us at our first anniversary dinner. His hand around my waist, my head on his shoulder. Was it always like this and I just refused to see it? Or did something actually change? My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Hello? Silence for a second. Then Ethan's mother. I just want to understand what happened, she said, tone sharp but controlled. Of course. I'm sure Ethan told you, I replied evenly. He said you abandoned him on vacation. I inhaled slowly. He told me to go home, so I did. She scoffed softly. Oh, don't be dramatic. You know how he jokes. I do, I said quietly. I've known for 3 years. He's devastated. I almost laughed at that. Was he devastated on the beach? Silence. He made a mistake, she said finally. You don't end a marriage over a mistake. I looked around the room. This wasn't about sunscreen. It wasn't even about Lila. It was about being treated like I was replaceable. He didn't make one mistake, I said calmly. He made the same one repeatedly. I just stopped accepting it. You're throwing your life away. No, I said. I'm reclaiming it. She hung up without another word. The call left a strange ache in my chest. Not because she hurt me, because she confirmed something. In that family, his ego mattered more than my dignity. Later that night, Ethan texted again. I'm home. That hit differently. He was back. Back in the same city, same space, same orbit. I'm coming over tomorrow. We need to talk. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to say yes, to sit across from him at our kitchen table and finally hear him admit everything clearly. Another part of me feared seeing him would unravel my resolve, because love doesn't disappear overnight, even when respect does. I typed, "Not tomorrow. I'm not ready." He replied almost instantly, "Are you already seeing someone?" There it was. Projection. Deflection. He couldn't process my decision without assigning another man as the reason. "No," I wrote back. "I'm seeing myself clearly for the first time." He didn't respond. I put my phone down and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. For the first time since Bali, tears slid down my temples into my hair. Not because I missed him, because I had finally accepted something devastatingly simple. I had loved him more than he had respected me, and that imbalance had been slowly eroding me for years. That realization hurt more than the sunscreen, more than the joke, more than the public humiliation, because it meant I had stayed too long. But as painful as that truth was, it was clean, and clean pain heals faster than confusing pain. I wiped my face, sat up, and whispered to the empty room, "I'm not going back." Not because I was angry, but because I finally understood my worth. 2 days later, Ethan showed up anyway. He didn't text first. He just knocked. I saw his silhouette through the frosted glass and felt my pulse jump. Not from longing, but from impact. 3 years of muscle memory doesn't disappear overnight. I opened the door halfway. He looked different. Not physically. Still well-dressed, still styled, still composed on the surface. But there was something fractured behind his eyes. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. "I didn't say you could come over." "I know, I just needed to see you." I stepped aside. He walked into the apartment and immediately looked around like he expected something to have changed. It hadn't. Same couch, same table. Same framed photo on the wall from our second anniversary, the one I hadn't taken down yet. He noticed that photo too. His jaw tightened. "I didn't think you were serious," he said. "I know." He ran a hand through his hair, the same nervous habit he had on the beach before calling Lila over. "I screwed up." "Yes," he swallowed. "But you didn't even fight. You just left." That was the moment. The pivot. "You're right," I said calmly. "I didn't fight." He blinked. "You always fight." "I always defended the marriage," I corrected, "even when you didn't." Silence settled between us. "I was joking," he tried again, softer this time. "No," I said, "you were testing." He frowned. "Testing what?" "How much I would tolerate." His lips parted slightly, but no words came out. I continued. "You flirt. I swallow it. You dismiss my discomfort. I adjust. You embarrass me publicly. I stay." I stepped closer, not aggressive, just steady. "You expected me to stay." He looked away. "That's not fair." "It is." His shoulders dropped. "Lila didn't mean anything." "I know." That answer surprised him. "You know?" "Yes. It wasn't about her." "Then what was it about?" "It was about you needing an audience more than you needed a partner." That landed hard. He sat down slowly on the couch. "I didn't realize," he started. "You didn't want to realize." His voice cracked slightly. "I love you." There it was. "I believe you," I said gently. His head lifted quickly. "You do?" "Yes." Hope flickered across his face. "But love without respect becomes control," I continued. "And I can't live inside that." He stared at me like I had spoken a language he didn't understand. "I never controlled you. You made me doubt myself every time I expressed discomfort." "That's not control." "It is when it happens repeatedly." Silence again. Then something unexpected happened. He didn't argue. He didn't deflect. He didn't accuse. He just sagged. "I don't know how to fix this," he whispered. And in that moment, I saw him clearly. Not the confident man at the wedding. Not the charming flirt on the beach. Just a man who had built his identity on being admired and didn't know how to function without applause. "You can't fix it," I said. His head snapped up. You're not even willing to try? I tried for 3 years. He covered his face with his hands. For a second, I almost reached out. Habit. Comfort reflex. But I stopped myself. Then my phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it. The screen lit up with a message from a coworker, a simple one. Meeting moved to 10. You free after? He looked back at me. Who's that? A colleague. He exhaled sharply. So you're already moving on. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Clarity. This is exactly what I mean, I said quietly. What? You're still centering yourself. He opened his mouth to argue, then stopped, because he saw it. Finally, the truth. I wasn't leaving because of another man. I was leaving because I refused to keep shrinking. He stood slowly. So that's it. Yes. He walked toward the door, then paused. I really didn't think you'd go. I know. He nodded once, and for the first time in 3 years, he didn't try to convince me. He didn't accuse me. He didn't blame me. He just left. The door closed behind him, and something inside me unlocked. Not triumph. Not revenge. Authority over my own life. That afternoon, I called a lawyer. Not dramatically. Not angrily. Just decisively. And when she asked me, "Are you certain?" I didn't hesitate. Yes. Because for the first time, my choice wasn't about reacting to him. It was about aligning with myself. And that felt powerful. The divorce paperwork moved faster than I expected. When you remove emotion from a decision, the logistics become surprisingly simple. My lawyer looked at me across her desk and said, "This is straightforward. No shared property beyond the apartment lease. No children, no complex assets. Just signatures. Just signatures. 3 years reduced to ink and dates. Ethan dragged his feet at first. Not because he wanted to fight the divorce, because he wanted to stall the finality. He sent messages like, "Are you sure we can't try counseling? People recover from worse. I'll delete Instagram. I'll change." Promises are loud when someone is losing control, but I had already stepped out of the noise. What I didn't expect was how quickly the social fallout would unfold. The Bali incident didn't stay in Bali. Screenshots circulated, stories spread, friends talked. And in social circles built on image, perception matters. Ethan's confident, charismatic persona began to crack. Madison stopped posting photos with him. Tyler removed him from a few tagged videos. Jessica, the professional whisperer, started telling a different version of events. He told her to go home. He didn't think she would. She actually just packed and left. The story wasn't scandalous. It was humiliating. Not because he flirted, but because he miscalculated. He underestimated me, and everyone saw it. One afternoon, Patricia, my boss, stopped by my desk. "You look lighter," she said. "I feel lighter." She studied me for a second. "You finally leave him?" I nodded. She smiled. "Good. No drama, no pity, just certainty." "I've been married 32 years, she added. "Confidence is attractive. Disrespect is not." That sentence stayed with me. Meanwhile, Ethan's calls slowed, then stopped. Not because he didn't care. A week later, Tyler texted me unexpectedly. "She's not taking it well." I stared at the screen. "She?" I replied. "Ethan, sorry, habit." I almost laughed. The irony. "She says she learned her lesson," he added. I didn't respond. Because lessons only matter if they're learned before consequences. That evening, my mom called. "I heard," she said. "From who?" "Debbie Henderson's sister's niece saw something online." Of course, small town information travels faster than Wi-Fi. "And?" I asked cautiously. "I'm proud of you." That caught me off guard. "Proud?" "Yes. I watched you shrink for 3 years." Her voice softened. "You deserve to take up space." I didn't realize I needed to hear that until she said it. A few days later, I ran into Madison at a coffee shop. She froze when she saw me, then walked over awkwardly. "Hey." "Hi." She shifted her weight. "Look, I probably should have said something sooner." "About?" "The beach, the flirting, all of it." I nodded slowly. But you didn't. She winced. I didn't want drama. I held her gaze. There was already drama. She didn't argue. Before she left, she said quietly, "You were calmer than I would have been." "That's why I left," I replied, "because calm is scarier than rage." Calm means the decision was made long before the explosion. By the time the divorce was finalized, I didn't feel victorious. I felt stable. The apartment looked different now. I moved furniture, opened the curtains fully, something Ethan always avoided because direct sunlight isn't flattering. I let the light in anyway. One Sunday, my dad made ribs. My mom set the table with her good plates. We sat there like nothing dramatic had happened. Just family, just warmth. At some point, my dad said, "He'll regret it." I shook my head. Maybe. But that's not my concern anymore. And it wasn't. The truth is, I didn't need him to regret it. I needed myself to remember it. Remember the feeling on that beach. Remember the stillness in my chest when he said those words. Remember how small I had allowed myself to become. Consequences didn't destroy him. They exposed him. And exposure feels heavier than anger ever could. The performance stopped. The audience shifted. And for the first time, I wasn't part of the show. I was out of it. A month after Bali, I woke up on a Sunday morning and didn't feel the urge to check my phone. That was new. For 3 years, my mornings started with monitoring. His mood, his posts, his energy, the temperature of the relationship. Now it was just sunlight on the ceiling. I walked into the kitchen, made coffee, and opened the curtains wide. The apartment filled with warmth. There was something symbolic about that. Ethan used to close the curtains halfway because the lighting wasn't ideal. He liked filtered light, controlled angles. And now I could have it. I sat on the couch with my coffee and realized something subtle but profound. Peace doesn't announce itself. It settles. It doesn't sparkle like chaos. It doesn't demand applause. It doesn't flirt for validation. It just exists. A few weeks later, I ran into Lila's name in a tagged Bali travel post while scrolling mindlessly. My chest didn't tighten. There was no spike of jealousy, just neutrality, because she had never been the issue. The issue had been what I tolerated. Ethan texted one final time before the paperwork finalized. "I hope you're happy." I stared at that message for a long moment. Then I typed back, "I am." No sarcasm, no edge, just truth. He didn't respond, and that felt like closure. On Sunday evenings, I started having dinner with my parents again. My dad would grill, my mom would talk about neighbors like it was breaking news. We'd laugh about small things. One night, my mom asked gently, "Do you miss him?" I thought about it honestly. "I miss who I thought he was," I said, "not who he showed himself to be." She nodded like she understood, because she did. Here's what no one tells you about reclaiming your life. It's not dramatic. It's not cinematic. It's quiet. It's waking up and realizing your body isn't tense. It's noticing you're not editing yourself mid-sentence. It's sitting at dinner and not competing with someone else's ego for air. For 3 years, I had been a supporting character in my own marriage. The steady one. The reasonable one. The woman who didn't make scenes. On that beach in Bali when he said, "If you're jealous, go home," he expected me to stay, to argue, to cry, to prove something. Instead, I listened. And that was the most powerful thing I could have done. Going home wasn't defeat. It was alignment. I didn't leave because I was jealous. I left because I was done accepting disrespect disguised as humor. Because love without respect becomes erosion. Because confidence without accountability becomes cruelty. Because peace is not boring. It is earned. Now when I sit in my living room with the curtains open and my coffee still hot, I don't feel like I escaped something. I feel like I returned to myself. He told me to go home, so I did. And for the first time in years, it actually feels like home. If this story resonates with you, remember this. You don't have to explode to make a statement. Sometimes the most powerful move is the quiet one. And sometimes going home is the bravest thing you can do.